Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Thank you so much for listening, whether it's on America One Radio, at the stream, or the app. Weekdays 9 to 10 a.m., 5 to 6 p.m. as well. And joining Progressive Voices via TuneIn, 7 to 8 p.m. weekdays. In either case, you can tell your Amazon Echo to play America One Radio or play TuneIn. Fantastic. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, the show is available via podcast as well. Let's get right to it. Tim Walz yesterday formally announced as Kamala Harris's running mate. I called this 9 days ago. Well, I said that's who she should pick, and damned if he's not the guy. And after listening to his speech, I'm more convinced than ever he's the guy. Faithful listener, if you've already heard the speech, the first half of today's show is that. So you can skip ahead by about 20 minutes or so and then catch up with the conversation. Reflection, reaction on the choice and the speech. And we've got to talk about the right wing's attempt to steal the 2024 election before it's even happened. Yes, they're doing this before our very eyes. First things first, let's go with the sunshine and rainbows. This was a fantastic night last night.
And now, welcome the next Vice President of the United States, Tim Walz.
Wow. Thank you, Philadelphia. Thank you, Madam Vice President, for the trust you put in me, but maybe more so, thank you for bringing back the joy. I'm thrilled to be on this journey with you and Doug, this incredible journey. And Pennsylvania, I know you know this, but my God, what a treasure you have in Josh Shapiro. Holy hell, can this guy bring the fire? He can bring the fire. This is a visionary leader. Also, I have to tell you, everybody in America knows when you need a bridge fixed, call that guy. And I think sometimes we forget, and you see people a little one-dimensional, but seeing a guy who cares so deeply about his family, a man with compassion, vision, and I'll have to tell you this, I know this from experience, there is no one you would rather go to a Springsteen concert in Jersey with than him, than that guy. Roots. And I can't wait for all of you and America to get to know my incredible wife, Gwen, a 29-year public school educator. Don't ever underestimate teachers. And our two beautiful kids, Hope and Gus. I couldn't be prouder to be on this ticket and to help Vice President Harris become what we all know is very, very good for us to think about. Next President of the United States of America. From her first day as a prosecutor, as a district attorney, Attorney General of the great state of California, a United States Senator, and Vice President of the United States. Vice President Harris has fought on the side of the American people. She took on the predators, she took on the fraudsters, she took down the transnational gangs, She stood up against powerful corporate interests, and she never hesitated to reach across the aisle if it meant improving people's lives. And I want all of you to hold this, and don't ever underestimate the power of this. She does it all with a sense of joy. I know a little something about that commitment to people. I was born in West Point, Nebraska. I lived in Butte, a small town of 400, where community was a way of life. Growing up, I spent the summers working on the family farm. My mom and dad taught us, show generosity towards your neighbors and work for a common good. My dad served in the Army during the Korean War, and with his encouragement, at 17, I joined the Army National Guard.
Some of his early training, by the way, done here in Georgia at the former Fort Benning, now known as Fort Moore.
For 24 years, I proudly wore the uniform of this nation. The National Guard gave me purpose. It gave me the strength of a shared commitment to something greater than ourselves. And just as it did for my dad and millions of others, the GI Bill gave me a shot at a college education. My dad was a teacher. My brothers and sisters and I followed in their footsteps. 3 out of 4 of us married teachers. What we do. For nearly 20 years, I had the privilege of teaching high school social studies and coaching football. Including winning that state championship. So thank you. Don't ever close the yearbook. Don't ever. But it was my students. They encouraged me to run for office. They saw in me what I was hoping to instill in them, a commitment of common good, a belief that one person can make a difference. So in 2006, I took a leap and I ran for Congress. And because high school teachers are super optimistic, I was running in a district that had 1 Democrat since 1892. Well, my neighbors graced me with an opportunity to represent them in the United States House of Representatives. I'm proud of the work we did there together. I worked across the aisle on veterans issues, on agriculture, and on ways to grow rural economies. I learned the art of compromise without compromising my values. And now, as governor of the great state of Minnesota, I bring those experiences to bear in tackling the challenges that are facing our great state. Minnesota's strength comes from our values, our commitment to working together, to seeing past our differences, to always being willing to lend a helping hand. Those are the same values I learned on the family farm and tried to instill in my students. I took it to Congress and to the state capitol, and now Vice President Harris and I are running to take those very values to the White House. Now, Donald Trump sees the world a little differently than us. First of all, he doesn't know the first thing about service. He doesn't have time for it because he's too busy serving himself. Again and again and again, Trump weakens our economy to strengthen his own hand. He mocks our laws. He sows chaos and division. And that's to say nothing of his record as president. He froze in the face of the COVID crisis. He drove our economy into the ground. And make no mistake, violent crime was up under Donald Trump. That's not even counting the crimes he committed.
Zing!
You know, some of us are, some of us in here are old enough to remember. I see you down there. I see those old white guys. Some of us are old enough to remember when it was Republicans who were talking about freedom. It turns out now what they meant was the government should be free to invade your doctor's office. In Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and their personal choices that they make. Even if we wouldn't make the same choice for ourselves, there's a golden rule. Mind your own damn business.
Love that. That is pitch perfect.
These guys are after my heart chanting, mind your own damn business. That feels good, so thank you. Look, that includes IVF, and this gets personal for me and my family. When my wife and I decided to have children, we spent years going through infertility treatments. And I remember praying every night for a call for good news. The pit in my stomach when the phone rang, and the agony when we heard that the treatments hadn't worked. So it wasn't by chance that when we welcomed our daughter into the world, we named her Hope.
And by the way, remind me a little bit later. I've got to play some audio from Tim and daughter Hope riding the slingshot ride at the Minnesota State Fair. It's hilarious. But there's a few more minutes of his speech to get to after a quick break, reaction to it as well, and that and much more to dive into. Thank you for listening to The Ron Show here on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, soon to be weeknights at Progressive Voices, or wherever you podcast. Incidentally, for those of you who listen via podcasts, you get to enjoy this show without commercials. Would you like to help keep it that way? Please visit The Ron Show's website, RonShowATL.com, donate tab, drop a little something in there, maybe something to help me get a coffee on a Dunkin' run or something like that. It'd be nice. Just saying. Back to Tim Walz's speech, where he accepted the invitation to join Kamala Harris on the Democratic Party ticket last night in a raucous Temple University arena in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
When Vice President and I talk about freedom, we mean the freedom to make your own health care decisions. And for our children to be free to go to school without worrying they'll be shot dead in their classrooms. By the way, as you heard, I was one of the best shots in Congress, but in Minnesota, we believe in the Second Amendment, but we also believe in common sense gun violence laws.
And don't let the right deceive you. That is a mainstream opinion. The NRA is not the mainstream.
Vice President Harris' idea of freedom is a ticket for education to be that ticket to the middle class, not crippling debt. Air that's clean, water that's pure, communities that are safe. A place where we settle our political differences not through violence, but with our votes. And that's what this election's about. What direction will this country go in? He's not going back. Well, Donald Trump would damn sure take us backwards. Let's be clear about that. And don't believe him when he plays dumb. He knows exactly what Project 2025 will do to restrict our freedoms. To rig the economy to help the super rich. If Trump gets a chance to return, he's going to pick up exactly where he left off 4 years ago. Only this time, it will be much, much worse. Raising costs on middle-class family. He will repeal the Affordable Care Act, no doubt about it. He'll gut Social Security and Medicare. And when somebody tells you they believe him. He said he'd ban abortion across this country, and he'll do it, whether or not Congress is there or not. Donald Trump's not fighting for you or your family. He never sat at that kitchen table like the one I grew up at, wondering how we were going to pay the bills. He sat at his country club up in Mar-a-Lago, wondering how he can cut taxes for his rich friends. And I got to tell you, his running mate shares his dangerous and backward agenda for this country. J.D. Vance literally wrote the foreword for the architect of the Project 2025 agenda. Like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland, J.D. studied at Yale, had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on! That's not what middle America is. And I got to tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy.
Okay, if you haven't heard this yet, you're going to love this.
That is if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So, you see what I did there?
I wish, hopefully you see the video of this, because his facial reactions to him making the funny are funny themselves.
Look. I got to tell you, pointing out just an observation of mine that I made. I just have to say it. You know it, you feel it. These guys are creepy, and yes, just weird as hell. That's what you see. That's what you see. So you know what's out there, so say it with me. We aren't going back. We aren't going back. We are not going back. So we got 91 days. My God, that's easy. We'll sleep when we're dead. Over those next 91 days and every day in the White House, I'll have Vice President Harris's back. Every single day. And we'll have yours. You know how this works. We can't do it alone. We need you, each and every one of you. Go over to KamalaHarris.com, get on board, because we need you. Freedom to make our own choices. This leader, this compassionate, careful, joyous leader believes in each and every one of you. My God, you came here tonight to sit at the very top because you love this country and you're not going back. She believes in the opportunity for every single person to join the middle class. She believes in the promise of America. We just got to fight. We just got to fight. Because as soon-to-be President Harris says, when we fight, we win. Thank you, Philadelphia. Thank you, Vice President. God bless America.
It's Minnesota Governor Tim Walz accepting the invitation to join Vice President Kamala Harris on the Democratic Party ticket for the presidency and vice presidency this November. 90 days now. I got goosebumps watching that last night and again listening to it today. Not everyone had the same reaction. We'll get reactions after this quick breather.
Call or text The Ron Show anytime at 404-919-2725. The Ron Show on America One Radio.
All right, now that we've had a chance to catch our breath after listening to some of you for the first time, of us for the second, third, maybe fifth time, Tim Walz accepting the invitation to join Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, on the Democratic Party ticket. Let's dive into some of the reactions. I want to start first with the New York Times opinion, folks, the editorial board, where it looks like they did a nice graph. I love visuals. I feel like I love Venn diagrams. I love visuals. So they do the nice little charts, the crosstabs that give you exciting at the top and meh at the bottom. Over to the left, it doesn't help and helps to the right. 5 of the 8 New York Times opinion writers believe that Walz's speech and selection was exciting and helps. Another believes it's exciting but doesn't help or is indifferent about it. And then 2 of the writers went to the side of doesn't at all help. And of those 2, one is indifferent about the excitement level. The other is actually of the belief that the choice is exciting. So that's pretty overwhelming, I would say. I don't see anybody who goes, nope, bad selection, not exciting. This is an exciting pick. And those on the right are going to do their thing too. They're going to nitpick about policy decisions that then Governor Walz made or votes that Congressman Walz made. But it's going to be awfully hard to try and mischaracterize who that man is. It's going to be very hard to mischaracterize who Tim Walz is. To give you a slice of who Tim Walz is, I first started thinking about this. Remember when Barack Obama was president and we were all having the conversation about who would you rather have a beer with? Who would you rather have a beer with? Donald Trump? I don't think he drinks beer. J.D. Vance? Maybe not even Kamala Harris. You'd have a beer with Tim Walz. I would venture to guess that if 10 people got to hang out with all 4 of those individuals, 9 of the 10 would come away feeling as if Tim Walz is like their new best friend. Like, I'd want to hang out with that guy again. Of the 4, I think he's the one that would come away the most liked by most Americans. I really do. And I don't think that's going to get any worse. They'll do what they can to nitpick policy decisions. His response to the George Floyd protests, which can be easily discussed. Happy to do that. And listen, we've got 90 days, so I'm sure we will. Let's see. COVID response period. That all happened in the same time. It's easy to nitpick what governmental leaders did in the early days of a pandemic that no one really knew how to handle. But the smart folks relied on scientists, medical professionals who had educated guesses. We could nitpick about how he made Minnesota a sanctuary state for those who needed emergency abortion access or gender-affirming care. They're going to make that a big issue because that's what the right does. When it comes to substance, when it comes to foreign policy, diplomacy, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to the issues that really matter, energy policy, climate change, they don't have policy, so they're going to look for divisive wedge issues. And they'd made some hay in the last few years attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. By the way, follow the show on Instagram, at RonShowATL. There was a photo of Tim Walz out fishing, wearing a bunch of, camouflagey looking fishing gear stuff, that opines that Tim Walz is an REI hire. If you don't know, REI is one of those like outdoor store chains like Cabela's or Bass Pro Shops. That's funny. No, they'll try and point out Minnesota's the state that put feminine pads, tampons in even boys' bathrooms to try and opine that that's weird, that it's unusual. And you could question that, I guess, but you could also say, what if there's a girl, middle school girl, who is experiencing her first period and her boyfriend goes to retrieve the necessary item to prevent her from having to be embarrassed to do it? I mean, that's quite possible, right? Anyway, I want you to listen to Tim Walz with his daughter Hope at the Minnesota State Fair. I cackled the first time I heard this. This is just who he is.
Hey, Minnesota, Governor Walz here, out at the State Fair with my daughter.
Hope.
Every year we as a family do something old and something new. I get to pick something, a classic, the old mill ride, to do that. And then Hope gets to pick something new.
I think we're going to go do the slingshot.
Which I don't know what it is, and they're keeping it from me. But then we're going to go get some food, corn dog.
I'm vegetarian.
Turkey then. And
Turkey's meat.
Not in Minnesota, turkey special. And we will go do some of those things and report back.
Oh my God! Oh my!
If you've ever done the slingshot, you know why they didn't tell him what it was.
Yes! Oh my God! Keep going.
Yes!
That was good. Good job, Dad.
Oh, thanks, Hope.
Oh my God!
All right, Minnesota, it's worth it. Woo! Wow, that is wild.
No, that was pretty cool, actually.
That is wild.
No, that'll be good.
It was okay. It was so worth it. Good call.
It was good.
Thanks for talking me into it.
You're welcome.
So can I just tell you, I'm 10 years younger than Tim Walz. I wouldn't recommend that for someone his age unless it's cardiology approved. Like, seriously, the slingshot, as soon as he said, we're going to ride the old mill ride, which just sounds like an old person, safe roller coaster-y kind of thing. Whatever the old mill ride is, it ain't the damn slingshot. When he said the slingshot, I'm like, oh, they didn't tell him what the slingshot, they didn't show him the slingshot, obviously. But that's hilarious. That's Tim Walz, y'all. I don't know the guy, but everything you hear about everybody that knows him says that's Tim Walz. I want to get back to some of the things that they're going to do to attack him, by the way. There's already the talk about, well, he got out of the military just before his unit got called to serve. Let's understand something. He served in the Army National Guard for 24 years. 4 of those years, by the way, his unit could have been deployed to Iraq and wasn't. Friend of the show, George Cheedy, by the way, tweeting about this. He covers politics. He's with The Atlanta Objective, theatlantaobjective.com. By the way, we've had him on the show many times. He's a brilliant reporter, brilliant journalist. He tweets about Tim Walz's retirement from the National Guard. The Army activated his unit for deployment after he declared his candidacy for Congress. His choices would have been to campaign while mobilizing, a no-no, quit his run, or retire. He retired. That's it. That's the story. Cheedy continues, if he had known his unit would be called up, I doubt he would have run. But having declared and raised money and the rest, he would have needed waivers from the Army to campaign, which is a hell of an ask. So he got out of the way with enough time to get someone else in. Cheedy continues, anyone who served would understand exactly how this went down. Complaining about someone, quote, retiring after 24 years of service, as someone being disloyal or shirking duty or the rest is unbearably stupid, which is why most people saying it are Republican partisans who never served. Veterans, by and large, do not talk shit about the quality or quantity of other veterans' service because every one of us knows someone else who is bigger and badder or saw more or sacrificed more. The only question is whether a discharge is honorable or not. Even that has caveats. I've seen a lot of other than honorably discharged homeless veterans who got a TBI, traumatic brain injury, that created a psychological condition that wasn't caught on the way out the door. Chidi continues, I don't go around shouting hoo-ah at people anymore. People who still do after getting out are a little weird. There's that word again. But if you think taking a shit on an honorably discharged E8 is good politics, you will see whatever the opposite of the Swift boat thing empty like a C-130 over it. George Chidi on the phone real quick to dovetail on that real quick. The one of the first attacks I spoke about is the trans rights issue in Minnesota, the tampons in the boys' bathroom, which I explained away. A lot of boys in middle school are chivalrous. They're going to go get the item for their girlfriend or their female friend in class or whatever. But I really wanted to zero in on what you were talking about, already attacking his National Guard service and how that's not going to go well for Republicans.
The first I saw of it was on Eric Erickson's Twitter feed, where he was essentially calling for a swift voting of Walz. And as a veteran from Massachusetts, that rubs me the wrong way. There was some controversy like some years ago where a couple of command sergeants major in Minnesota wrote an open letter saying that Walz essentially got out in order to avoid service in Iraq.
I believe that was when he was running for re-election for governor, right? Like the candidate against him.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: that's not what happened. Like, first, over the course of his 24-year career, like in the National Guard, like Walz deployed all the time.
Right.
But he had declared for Congress when his unit got called up. And so, the Army has very strict rules about political activity by active duty service members. As a National Guardsman, until your unit gets activated, and then you are effectively regular Army, and the rules apply. His choice was get a waiver from the Army, which is politically weird and difficult and all the rest, quit the Army or quit his congressional race. He was the one guy who was going to be able to win that district as a Democrat, which is to say he was about to do political damage to his party if he abandoned his run. So he did the honorable thing and put in his paperwork after 24 years in and left with enough time for some other E8 in the unit or elsewhere to take over his duties as a command sergeant major, before, as they were mobilizing.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't wait until the last minute. He did it with enough. He did it with enough time so that his unit wouldn't get stranded. He's an artillery command sergeant major. And I say this with love in my heart. They're relatively easy to replace. There's no shortage of E8s in that military occupational specialty. It's not like he was in an esoteric, hyper specialized intelligence unit or something like that. Infantry, artillery, armor, engineers. You can find another one.
Let's also remember, too, that at this point in time, the Iraq War had gotten very unpopular. It was a very divisive concept within the American political lexicon. George W. Bush might not have been reelected without the swift voting of John Kerry. So there were conscientious objectors who were leaving the Guard ranks all the time. I have a close friend who was in the Air Guard, and he and his boyfriend ran off to Vermont to get, I guess at the time not married, but domestically partnered, so he could go back to his unit and say, "You guys don't want me anymore." And that's not why they got hits, but I mean, it kind of played out well. So, I mean, Tim Walz could have taken that route and didn't.
I mean, there's some evidence that he had objected to the war,
sure,
as a private citizen. But that's not like it's almost irrelevant. Yeah. Like if he hadn't been running, he would have been he would have deployed. Mm-hmm. Like, so it's like this attack is dumb, and
I kind of think it'll go away swiftly, though.
I think so too. It's just evidence right now that the Republican Party is flailing in the face of an actual, vibrant campaign.
No, you're not wrong. And in fact, as a
know what they want to do.
As a lifelong Democrat, my fatalism creeps into it's like, this is going too well right now.
Yeah, well, let's keep that spirit. I want to be a cynical Gen Xer about this.
Yeah, no, you're right.
We need to run through the tape.
Yeah, so true. And we've got that coach now who's going to give us the locker room speech so we can head out and win the second half. I mean, that's how I feel about this guy.
I don't think this is an attack that anybody's going to.
Yeah.
I don't think they want anybody here.
Yeah.
With that. But more to the point, it's not the substance of it. It's evidence that we want this sort of surface nonsense personal, they're doing this because a substantive policy discussion inevitably turns into a discussion of Project 2025, which is wildly unpopular once you drill into the policy details, and they are desperately trying to avoid an actual policy discussion.
Well, you nailed it when you mention the word substance. They don't tend to have much of it when it comes to policy. And then when you find where they do have something written down, and as Kamala Harris said weeks ago, can you believe they put that in writing? That's what they have, and that's all they have to lean on. All right, listen, I know you got to head to a staff meeting. George Cheedy, thanks for joining us from the Atlanta Objective. I appreciate it.
Happy to help.
All right, quick break. Going to catch our breath again and come right back. This is The Ron Show on America One Radio. Okay, final few minutes to, and I know you hear it in my voice. I am in a really good mood. I mean, could you have imagined a month ago, is it a month? 6 weeks ago, that we'd be sitting in this position on the trajectory that we were on, from those of you who are left of center? Could you imagine we'd be in a position where we had the momentum? It didn't feel, not only did it not feel like that, it didn't look like that, it wasn't that. And now we're in a completely different situation. But not all is well in Camelot. The New York Times opinion, folks, I mentioned, 5 of the 8 who were polled, who feel that Tim Walz being added to Kamala Harris' ticket is helpful and or exciting. 4 of those 5 believe helpful and exciting. 1 believes it's exciting, maybe not helpful. The 2 others, the remaining 2 on that panel, 1 believes it's an exciting pick but doesn't help Kamala Harris in any way electorally. You could make the argument. And then there was the one opinion writer, Liam Donovan, who believes it doesn't help and is indifferent about the excitement. I don't know what Liam is, what he's enjoying. But I'm going to go through the New York Times opinion piece. I'll share this in the show notes because that's what I do at ronshowatl.com with today's podcast. Josh Barrow, author of the newsletter Very Serious. Tim Walz is good on television, and his roots as a high school teacher and football coach from the rural Midwest will offer a good contrast to the Republican ticket. And he does no harm. What voter is open to Kamala Harris but finds Walz off-putting to elect? Exactly. Charles Blow, Times columnist. Walz made weird happen. His affable and relatable style on the campaign trail helped him distill the current conservative movement into a single word. Weird. That has been a surprisingly effective attack line. He brings a plain-talking, labor-friendly Midwestern appeal to the ticket. He is Joe Biden 20 years ago. Yes. I read that last night, and my reaction, yes, he's Joe Biden in a younger form. Jane Coaston, contributing opinion writer. We've never had a defensive coordinator in the White House or on the campaign trail. Excited to hear how the 4-4 will work nationally. That's a football reference, and not a really good one. Sorry, Jane. Gail Collins, Time columnist, teacher and football coach, exclamation point. Michelle Cottle, political writer for opinion at the New York Times. The guy looks natural, rocking a camo baseball cap and grubby t-shirt, a big plus for a party that has trouble relating to regular folks. Plus, he clearly knows how to have fun in the attack dog role without being the least bit nasty. Here we go down to some of the other folks who are a little less enthusiastic. Liam Donovan, we were called the Republican strategist. An affable character with an avuncular charm befitting a career teacher and coach. Walz's background as a senior enlisted National Guardsman and his unique path to the governor's mansion stand out in a sea of elites and strivers. Odd couple pairing adds cultural and optical balance to the ticket. That's a Republican strategist, y'all. Ross Dothat, the Times columnist. I'm looking forward to the vice presidential debate, which will now feature two supporters of child tax credits who otherwise represent quite different middle American folkways. Scotch-Irish versus Minnesotan, and even more divergent pathways from those roots to national political ambitions. Michelle Goldberg, Times columnist. Walz is incredibly charming, has a perfect Midwestern biography, is great on the attack, and unifies the Democratic Party. He was reportedly Nancy Pelosi's favorite, and she's the best tactician in Democratic politics. We get to the part where folks are nervous now. Back to Barrow. Tim Kaine, Hillary Clinton's vice presidential pick, was a do-no-harm pick too. By picking Walz, Harris passed up an opportunity to lock down Pennsylvania and better reassure moderate swing voters. And if, as I suspect, Harris picked Walz because she feared Josh Shapiro would overshadow her, that speaks poorly of her confidence and of how she is likely to govern. I'm going to nitpick on this a little bit because I have to say, first of all, Tim Walz could very well overshadow Vice President Kamala Harris. Anyone who watched that speech or has heard him speak before could see that potentially happening. But I have to say, this thought that he doesn't help in any way electorally is kind of silly to me. Because, yeah, okay, sure, Minnesota's not in play. Wisconsin is. Minnesota and Wisconsin are just separated by a lake. And actually less than that in a few spots. I believe that Tim Walz relates to that middle part of Pennsylvania that folks call Alabama between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. He could make Ohio in play. Hell, there are a lot of Minnesotans who retire to Arizona and Florida. The right is out peddling, by the way, the anti-Semitic swipe because Josh Shapiro wasn't chosen. Mehdi Hassan was on CNN last night to eviscerate that.
The decision that she made is also being used to criticize her and her viewpoints in the Democratic Party. They're talking less from the Republican side about Tim Walz and more about the decision not to choose Josh Shapiro as the governor. And the word anti-Semitism is coming up as some basis to substantiate that criticism. What's your reaction?
I mean, it's one of the most, one of the dumbest and most dangerous lies that we've heard from the Republicans in recent days. Obviously, the call went out on whatever right-wing WhatsApp group, because they're all doing it. Ari Fleischer, Newt Gingrich, they've all been on it. Nikki Haley, Ted Cruz, they've all been piling in, but it's anti-Semitic. I think Eric Erickson said today, there's no Jews at the top of the Democratic Party allowed, to which Chuck Schumer responded, news to me. And it's not just the Senate Majority Leader who is Jewish Democrat, by the way. All 10 Jewish senators in the United States Senate are Democrats. 24 of the 27 House members who are Jewish are Democrats. All 4 governors in America who are Jewish are Democrats. The Secretary of State, the Treasury Secretary, the Attorney General, the Homeland Security Secretary, and the Second Gentleman are all Jewish Democrats. So it's a nonsense lie. That's the Democratic Party's record. Look at the Republican Party record. Vance is saying this is anti-Semitic. The guy is running alongside Donald Trump, the most openly anti-Semitic presidential candidate we've seen in our lifetimes. This is a guy who hosted a Holocaust denier for dinner at his home less than 2 years ago, who says American Jews are disloyal to Israel, constantly says that, who famously praised Nazis, saying Jews will not replace us as very fine people, who last week was on a radio show where he agreed with the host calling Doug Emhoff a crappy Jew. Today he called Adam Schiff Shifty Schiff. So Republicans really need to sit this one out. I mean, Vance himself has defended Marjorie Taylor Greene, she of Jewish space lasers fame. So the idea that they want to make this an issue, good luck to them.
Yeah, 1,000%. I'm running out of time. You hear the music, right? Back tomorrow, 9 to 10 a.m. on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, and soon to be 7 to 8 p.m. on Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Oh, yeah, and available via podcast wherever you podcast. See you tomorrow.